don't have the tools as adults. So why would we want to go to the basement, if you will, the depths of darkness, understanding and knowing on some intuitive level and going right back to the time where it was completely overwhelming to have done that. And very much, again, this was another area where I wasn't one of the children who had heard stop being dramatic, or kind of the outward ways that are stop crying, you're weak, or whatever it was, the direct things that were said in terms of shaming. Though I was still very shamed to the extent that I heard a lot of language around or response to my emotional self-expression. Right. So when a parent pulls away, when I was showing an upset of whatever variety that it was, my mom shut it down because she didn't have the ability to present that same message of, oh, this is shameful. And then I think what gets tied into that and why it's difficult, we then identify with the shame. Right? It becomes, there's capacity inherently in my books and able to zoom out and understand all the different dynamics and remember to do this. And then we become an embodiment of the shame. So how vulnerable is it when we are faced with any kind of conversation, like we want to do work day in, day out, or having emotions are an important part of the journey. Reconnect with them, learn how to navigate that. What many of us have learned is that they are shameful aspects of our being. So I just wanted to speak to the developmental trajectory of why it happens. When emotions happen. So that first piece, new awareness, so I can shift my relationship with my emotional body, if you will, is only one step of the journey. The next step is, and this is again why I found it so important to begin to speak holistically in this capacity. Then the next step is to need to teach ourselves stress and emotional resilience, the ability to be in our emotional body with sensations are becoming dysregulating without just relying, because this is where we compound the shame. Oh, okay, well now I'm going to start to attend to my emotions, I'm going to tune to them, I'm going to be with them. And before long, if you don't have a safe, secure community, a safe, secure relationship, some tools to even self-soothe these emotions, then we find ourselves right back in the old habitual way we tended to them, however it is, feeling even more broken and even more shameful. Absolutely. Even though the blanket is great, I have a note here. I want to make sure I get you. Bringing it back to this particular audience, is people will. I was talking with a survivor actually who read your books and really did that work of your books. Started to feel more safe emotional expression after having that. Difficult opening with parents, she felt safe expression, but then she kept encountering people who were not safe, right? Because I think one of the hardest things is, short of us locking ourselves in the room, which I know many survivors want to do, and I fully resonate with that. We have to be in it. Is as somebody does this amazing work you're telling folks to do, you're not telling people to, but guiding them through. When they start to really feel safe in their body, safe in that connected to that emotional expression, I knew something was in room, and that person started shutting down and like they're trying to sort of this other person, but that person's still coming at them. This is the kind of thing this community is going to run into. How would you teach someone to navigate that? Most important awareness of its circumstance. As we're becoming clearer and separating ourselves from other people and gifting ourselves with this beautiful safety and security and emotional attunement to ourselves and ability to express it, is to continue to remind ourselves that someone else's emotional reaction, behavioral choices, whatever it might be, are not a reflection of us. Because for me, blurring that line of separation. Again, all the indirect messages I was given. Don't do that, I'll get upset. Or don't you want to do that? Make me happy. Right? It learned, and I carried with me this intense responsibility that I am somehow responsible for how someone else feels, and ultimately, as I was sharing earlier, that shutdown scenario, what someone else does, their availability to even continue a relationship with me should I wish to. And I think keeping that top of mind in those moments, where no matter what it, because this is again with the history of invalidation from the outside that's then become internalized, and then we invalidate ourselves. This is the moment where we can question our perspective in the moment. We can question our progress, and we can begin to take on a level of responsibility that was never ours to begin with. So keeping that top of mind, again, of course, this first step, I'm always breaking things down into the awareness, can be very helpful in those moments to allow ourselves to stay grounded in our boundaries, whatever they might be, create the separation if we need to do that in a relationship, and then it is those action steps of doing just that, standing in a boundary, giving ourselves maybe some time away to reground and regroup, and or creating separation and distance within the relationship if and when we are continuing to have those boundaries violated.
I mean, it's very helpful. And I know that there's some folks who say they were in and out of the awareness, they know it. But, with time to keep doing the work, there is the ability to hold that more safely. There's also something really fantastic you said in the book. You wrote it very specifically here. You wrote about explaining away the hurt when the person's hurt instead of being with the hurt. You were talking about your own relationship with Sophia when she was reactive. And while you understood Sophia's reactivity, you didn't be with the hurt. That to me was one of the most powerful pieces of information that came out for folks who are experiencing these kinds of relationships. Because there is all the questions I get is like, why did they do that? Why did they do that? Why did they do that? I said, I'll tell you, okay? But ultimately, you're hurt. And that hurt to me actually holds a greater positionality. Like it's you're in pain. And our pains are teachers, right? And that we get so caught up in. Again, someone as wise as you was going to understand why Sophia was reactive, right? Can you talk a little more about that? Because I think it's a really important point that we're in such an era of everyone understanding, wanting to know the why, explaining the other person, right? But ultimately what that does is in that transaction, we lose our hurt.
Understanding, over-understanding, analyzing, over-analyzing, right? All of that, I think that comes often very well intentionally when we're maybe in a therapeutic experience, this idea with churning things. And one of the things that drove me into psychology to begin with was a desire to understand others. And universally, all of our human mind share that desire, that instinctual, even function of trying to understand the world around us, to exert some sense of safety, some sense of control through predictability. So if I can understand, right, I might be able to better predict behavior and ultimately keep myself safe in how I navigate that behavior. The second piece of it that you're beautifully touching on is that action of being in my thinking mind, even so we believe to be in service of self-awareness, of relational awareness, is an action of distancing, a protective, adaptive action. So for me, body, it was safer for me to hover above my body and try to understand as opposed to feel, because I didn't have the safe and secure attachment in which to feel and learn how to navigate feeling physiologically the emotions in my body. And I think a lot of us, and I saw that then in the pattern that I described in my relationships, and I would pride myself sometimes on being, wow, how compassionate and empathetic and understanding I am. That I can, in a moment of being heard, not even connect to the fact that I'm heard, explain away my hurt by saying, oh, well, I know why this reaction, or I have an idea of why this reaction is happening, or from what I part of friends, right? I might know what happened to their child. No, I know that they're just hurt in this moment. So I was keeping myself at a distance from my own hurt, and then keeping myself safely away from my hurt, and ultimately from the byproduct of that hurt. Because if I were to attune to how I felt, then I might have to get a little bit clearer on boundaries, changes that I need to make in this relationship.
Yeah, and I think that it does become a call to action, and the call to action can be very scary. The status quo, because of all the reasons. Because here's one of the big questions. I almost want to bring it in now, because if I wait till the end, and then if we would have gotten to it fully, because I think it's so important. There's a point I made earlier. Many people in these validating field of called the narcissistic relationship actually cannot. They can't. So the stimulus, this thing that's coming at them, so they're simultaneously could be doing the work, all attending to all the things we're talking about, the awareness, the bodily awareness, all of it. But simultaneously, the things are happening to them. Now, in my work, a lot of it is psychoeducation. Like, I want you to understand the apparatus, because one thing to remember is this is not going to change. I really want to lift that. I'm trying to lift that variable out of the equation. That there's nothing you're doing here that's going to change what's going to happen in this world. The actual dynamic relationship, even if I'm going to parts of it, and I think that's a big piece of saying whenever I'm accepting this really sensitive, survivor story, there really are things to do. But when people can't leave, I have to believe they'll heal. I've seen, and I'd like to think you believe that too. I imagine you do from reading your work. How would you help people? How would you guide people who can't leave? And the reasons, Nicole, might be financial, they might be cultural, they may be religious, they may be very real fear-based, right? Post-separation abuse and stalking and social shaming. I mean, there's because people are listening to this all over the world. Right, this isn't just people who might have the privilege and the ability to lead relationships with the resources. There are many of the people listening to this are in parts of the country where leaving relationships really isn't a safe option, or it's issues around duty and loyalty, which are deeply held constructs. I never believe in judging, shaming, or questioning the reasons people stay, but I know when they stay, even when they do some of this work, it's almost as though a person learns anything they want, but they have a train track out their window. That damn train's making noise every hour. Right? And that noise is coming into their environment. This is worse than the noise, because the noise is targeting them and manipulating them. So how would you? What are some of the things you would offer to somebody who can't leave for all the things that we're talking about? So very much like you, there is feeling that comes. I think the first instinctive thing we want to do, right, is for the person or the dynamic to shift and change. And I think this radical acceptance that you're sharing about, when we stop focusing all of our energy and attention in getting something problematic or dysfunctional in the other person's side of the street in that dynamic change, then we can serve half much more energy to allow ourselves to heal. And at the same time, when I read things as a psychologist, it was very clear. It wasn't just people in the community in Philadelphia where I was living at the time that were following in common. It was global. The conversations that I was having, the loneliness, going back to that concept you touched on really quickly earlier, feeling now lonely in a different way, not lonely in my relationships because I wasn't allowing myself my wants and needs and wasn't really a part of them. Now I was starting to feel lonely and desiring of more authentic relationships, grounded in safety and security and authentic self-expression. And with that desire and all of this new information and wanting to share it with whatever community showed up, I started to understand the need, like you shared, factors that contribute to circumstances outside of which I'm living, and the inaccessibility of these conversations to begin with, which is why I continue to have them freely accessible as you do, right across all of the
media platforms,
Heck.
and I became very clear on how supportive and necessary community is. Even if we don't have access to it in our physical environments or within our families, because we're very shameful and needing to uphold loyalty, saying even in family dynamics that are causing the dysfunction in and of itself, how therapeutic it can be to have access to support somewhere. So for anyone who is stuck or unable to create physical separation, continuing, of course, to honor themselves in all of the ways that they can and their ones they need, and finding supportive relationships somewhere is, in my opinion, so incredibly important. And I see that day in and day out. Such healing in outside of even the information I'm giving, just in the comment section. Individuals seeing remnants of their own story, feeling less alone, hearing of relationships, even virtual, that have been created now maintained across years of time, where people are able to, if you're not able to bring some of these conversations in that core or primary or family unit, because that's where the dysfunction lives, having somewhere to bring that and to gain support can be such an incredible, important part of healing when you can't physically leave.
It's everything. I mean, in our training program, we have a community platform, and it is when I'm sort of peering and look at that. I'm watching survivors become healers, right? And that to me is absolutely stunning evolution, because now they're realizing they're really finding meaning and purpose even in all the suffering, all the harm, and in helping someone they learn that sense of capability and resilience and strength in themselves. So that can't be interiorized work, right? That has to be done with other people. Now, there was a part of your book to be selfishly, a strong impact on you, right? And it was your authentic needs checklist, right? And it was where you're breaking down: do I move my body? Do I move my body? Do I give my body enough rest? Do I feel rest? Do I feel emotion and safety, security? So I am not playful. Definitely didn't come up for me, but it's interesting. I know that what I'm about to share is something I see in our community platform. I hear it from survivors every day in my practice everywhere. Is that I actually don't do. I am not good at feeding myself well, and my body enough. I don't give my body enough rest. I do well with stress. I do think I am stress resilient. I feel emotional safe and secure in myself, but not necessarily in relationships. Like I really allow myself to go in there. I'm in my home care family story and all of that. But if anyone asked me, "Are you in a good place, Rami?" I'd be like, "Yeah, no. I mean, in many ways, I'm enacting dreams I put on ice for a very long time because of my own personal voices. I'm pushing myself. I'm feeling in a more secure place myself. I'm aware of why I'm doing things. But that other piece of it, it is, I know what motivates. It's interesting. I can't wish I could say this beautiful. Like, I'm full of life and everything. Nope. I'm like, it's fear. It's a fire in my ass that makes me run faster and faster. And I'm hard to hear it anymore. I'm not very good in negative emotions. And it was very interesting because I was thinking about, I'm not. I love you. I know a lot of people like today we use it to articulate meaning in our community that don't. And yet I feel okay, and yet I don't feel okay. And I found that to be a very mishmashy place for myself, right? Because I'm being deeply honest, right? I wish I could sit here and say, I take good care of myself and I don't eat badly, and I know why I'm pushing myself as hard as I am right now. It is part of it, part of my process, but something is being left behind. And I don't even know why, and that's bringing that up as a question, but I question because you work with so many millions of people are really hearing what you're saying and making profound changes in their life. How do you? I mean, how do you deal with the person that's saying what I'm saying? I'm actually good. Like I wake up excited, but I also wake up with it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't meditate. I'm like, well, I gotta feed the cat, I gotta this, and I got a research meeting, and I can't be late for the poll. Like that's usually I kind of wake up and it's always like I don't want to let Nicole down. I don't want to let the music down. Like it's still very to me things that carry me. So I can you talk about that because I think this mishmash and chaos I'm talking about. If survivors get to what I'm talking about, I'm like, you're doing it because I'm not as narcissistic relationships. They still get sort of chewing my fingernails. Somebody referenced so much of so wired. If I talk about the ancient cells, find them as our biological wiring, that we all repetitive narrative about what things are being about me and why, what I should be doing in any given moment, and wired into our neurobiology, feeling, and theology, how I'm even familiar. And one of the conditioned cells that I cite that I very much relate to this, I call it overachiever, this endless focus on doing, right? What do I have? What is my to-do list? Spent decades feeling like I couldn't relax until I checked the final box, cleaned the house, and then I could sit on the couch ultimately and try to feel the relaxation that I was looking for in my relationships. I looked like always worrying about what other people think, not wanting to be an emotional burden. Again, all of this tracks right back to that first early. What I come to realize, and I met with from the moment I wake up, I have an endless email box. I have a podcast schedule for the day. What I have learned is those foundational tools, which really map onto what I believe to be our universal physical and emotional needs for nutrients. All of our cells and organs need nutrients, need oxygen, need water. Our muscles need to move to whatever extent we're physically capable to discharge energy. We need rest and movement just as much as we need movement and restorative and sleep at night. And we need to be able to tolerate stressful experiences and to give and receive support. Because again, we are interpersonal creatures who have banded together in relationship or community to survive. So what I have learned is still a daily commitment, especially now when I'm in a very busy podcast and recording season. If we're not meeting our body's physical needs in those ways, in small ways even, imagining many of you listening have very real obligations that we have to show up to, that we even want to show up to. Now that I've created a life I love, I feel so passionate, purposeful, things that I never thought would pertain to me. I read books about passion, purpose, and I think, oh, that's interesting. In my constitution, I feel those things. Playpoint brought that up as well. I was one of the most serious people, and I've come to realize that that inability to relax until I checked that last box was so much on checking all the physical foundational boxes of my body, because it wasn't that I could relax when it was done. The reality was that I couldn't relax. All of the boxes, quicken breath, or holding my breath that I often do when I'm more or emotionally overwhelmed, was sending my mind signals that was the least safe thing that I could. So stay committed to whatever small ways that we can build and to give all of those needs that I was saying earlier. Let's after it, nervous system, the ability to deal with stressful and upsetting emotions so that we can co-regulate and connect with the world around us. But again, I'd be lying if I did not acknowledge very transparently. It is still that overachiever is wired inside of me. Getting up at a time where I have moments to tend to my body, and it's not even. I think sometimes people might look at someone like me and think that I have a 30-minute meditation practice or a bigger meditation. I'm talking about 5 minutes here and there, 5 minutes that I did an independent yoga practice. That was my moment. We sat in silence for a couple of minutes while I was drinking my water. These are and then translate to my ability to truly be of service later. I'm so thankful for that. Just that alone, again, without storage. That because it's really well happened to me, but more day. I thought your shower, I'm like, the next mom's truck. And that idea of a small
What?
way that I find myself in relationships is the role I want to play for someone else, or just
About
how I
you.
want to express about myself in service of my relationships. And as I become aware of whatever, I think it's my body, sometimes even in different relationships, can bring out different aspects of our conditioning, and I can begin to create space to make choices that are more aligned with the world in certain ones. So it's not to say like I was constructing myself that conditioning to it. I think that's what some of us can hesitate or maybe before. Well, I become aware of it, so now that changes proceed into the background of the body. And it's not the case, we still have the narratives of worry, beliefs, even instinctive compulsions to do in that particular adaptive or conditioned way. Going back to what you were saying earlier, not only are small steps beneficial for our nervous system that will get challenged, bigger, more important, or I should say, that we deviate from those familiar patterns. What the benefit is in saying commit to the smallest of ways and begin to show up in service of ourselves. But we are teaching ourselves psychologically that it is more important to zone in on change here is the ability to trust that we will show up in service of ourselves. So as we marry together the small steps and the change, changing dynamics in relationships, as we're talking about doing this conditioning work, it will be an impact on sometimes the person who's used to us showing up in a particular way will be surprised because that's a normal emotion that happens. Expectations like, wait a minute, you were always here for me this way, and now you're telling me you're not going to be here. And if there's a panic, that could be a reaction to be elevated. They're not going to change. It's like we talked about earlier too, in terms of needing to stay. So we will get we can work discernment, we're building more confidence in our own ability to make it work regardless of how relationships are.
I mean, again, this repetition self, I love it so much. One thing that's read that mentioned in your book, and I agree with you, I think self compassion, these are very, very deep. Not very, very survival oriented. But I also think we can receive that compassion rather than I think that person might not achieve like, hey, I'm going to keep your back in the house again. Like I really, I mean, I'm being partial, but in a way, I also thought, how do we be compassionate to parts of ourselves? They're really good parts of ourselves, which are why we are, you know, I don't know what you know about Dr. Janina Fisher talks a lot about sort of the right brain, left brain intuition. She talks about it, and it relates to a lot of stuff we talk about fragmentation of self, very responsive. She really does talk about that right brain self. Felt memory as a word. And the left brain is the part that's also the brain conductor that keeps all the work at a time. Which is why so many of us we've been through life. So many survivors of narcissistic relationships very cognizant in their life. They're showing up, they're doing the things, they're getting the bus out, having a career, they're keeping it up, running, but that left brain all of a sudden, those fragmented parts get done by the fight, the fight, all the one pops out. That we create that systematically. The left brain never gonna get to the bus stop, and the right brain like are getting me. I don't know. And so I think they're fighting, but it's also the fragmentation cultivates condition self ultimately brought together to survive to receive these compassion. When I read that list, I thought, I'm not mad at you. I'm good. Like I can see the little Romney. Like she was trying to do an impossible task, and all of the conditioned self are trying to put them on the job. They probably show up in excess to me. Honestly, I was all for your conditioned self, except the hero worshiper and the life of the party. Never ever been like, never will be the life of the party. But the hero worshiper now, I think I would be, although I have a natural response, because I'm a response now, it's never been the hero worship.
Hi.
I'm going to ask you two more things before one, as quick as I can, which is, this is a big question, so I'm sorry to drop here at the end, but how do you account on the basis of gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, nationality, race, religion, ability, age, being something like a woman, right? That's a fact. They are in the objective world. They will hold less of that power. That comes against, obviously wanting to hold that within self. So even if you develop that within yourself, you walk into a world, forget a narcissistic person, you walk into a world that may invalidate that in any number of ways, whether it's mispronouncement, whether it's gendering, whether it is to do with dismissive language, whatever it is. How do you work with folks who are experiencing that disempowerment by the intersectional status that they hold when they go into a world that sees that?
And speaking as I had been throughout on the two levels. On the first level, the way I understand at least, any disempowering action of an individual, action of a group of individuals, action of systems, right, that are comprised of individuals ultimately and their thought and their beliefs that enact it.
No, you're supposed to hang me.
They view that disempowerment as a function of threat, trauma,
Oh, you got
right, as
fleas.
the only way in which the time this individual or individuals, right, felt that they could gain their own sense of safety and security. And so understanding that though does not remove, as is the case, the reality that traumatized individuals, and we have a lot of traumatized systems now that have been enacted for eons of time. Though I think that understanding allows the possibility in one of my hopes for the future, which is especially when I see communities doing the deep work your community is doing
Come sit.
for change
Taco.
at the most
Come sit.
global systematic level. If we can each heal as individuals in our relationships and in our communities, and I talk about even scientific power of heart coherence being extended outward in terms of social coherence and the incredible impact that signals of safety and security
Come sit.
can have, not only in our ability as individuals to be curious about difference and not tear down or violate or harm difference,
What are
be
you doing?
interested and be able to collaborate even with those that we disagree with. I think inherently this is how, again, our species has created.
Yeah, he's gonna come down. Don't worry.
Intergenerationally traumatized by external factors for so long. So understanding is half of the journey, of course, that there is the reality of navigating, right, the continued harm of not bypassing the reality of those moments of violation, of abuse, of discrimination. And again, my hope is that change will continue to happen as individuals and communities find healing. Because so many of these patterns have been passed from generations of movement that have come before all of us ultimately. Are now just being enacted at such a global scale. And I think hand in hand with this can be the feeling of helplessness, powerlessness, whether you're the individual experiencing these traumatic events in the communities, or whether you're hearing about and your loved ones are people you've heard about are the people who are experiencing these traumatic events. I think we can, as individuals and even as communities, feel very powerless and hopeless. Though one of my hopes for all of my work is that this will give us all a pathway forward that will allow these behaviors and these systems to be no longer what is enacted, because we don't have to feel threatened by each other, and we can join together the beautiful diversity that is humanity, and in a shared vision of our shared planet and our shared resources into the future.
We just, anyway, we can do that. You know what? We just gotta stop having to be in charge. That's really all it takes. But I want to say two last things. That one is that I was speaking with someone about who had read all of your books and had, really used your work and to help her heal. And then she met a narcissist. So she read how to do the work. And then she met a narcissistic person. And she said, and I wanted to share this with this community because I think many of these folks have also read your prior books. Narcissist dismantling the book. And I think that that's a very telling, because she said, I actually did feel I'd done the work and I had come a long way. And armed with that strength and belief in myself and my empathy and all that, this person kind of came in and dismantled it. However, she said having that work created a foundation while the relationship devastated me. So my ego and devastated her, completely threw her life off kilter.
You're so
She
poor.
was able to get out. She went through a process of healing. She found my work as well. She did work together. And she, she said, I
Hey. What's the matter? Come here, Boober. Mm. Mm.
3 and globally have been steamrolled. It is also clear that globally, it is also clear that it has been integrated not just over 6 months, not just over 2.5 years, but it has been planned over decades. The changes to legislation in this country were done so that they could control doctors and people. But people are waking, and it's thanks to people like Dr. Altman and all the presenters here today, thanks to people like Senator Babette and Craig Kelly. We know and we knew that this is all bullshit and that we've been had. But we are going to hound you down, the people that are guilty. We are going to hound you down and hold you accountable. And we will expose your global agenda so that the people of Australia can be free in the future. Because I'm looking forward to my grandkids. And we're going to save this country.
That was great.
I am Dr. Philip McMillan. Thank you for joining me for again a very important interview presentation with people across the world. There's been a lot of attention on New Zealand recently with regards to Barry Young and the leaking of information from the Ministry of Health. But we need to understand a little bit more about New Zealand, how they think and talk to people who are actually on the ground. Now, you have to remember that Barry Young represents one voice who is challenging the narrative. But I have the tremendous opportunity to speak to one of the other voices that challenge narrative. He's part of a group and an organization. So today I want to understand a little bit more about him. I want to understand a little bit more about his thoughts as to what has been happening in New Zealand, and most importantly, where is it that
there's so many of you.
in terms of the future? Because here's the reality. New Zealand is very unusual. And it's unusual because they technically had zero COVID.
What?
So they were able to vaccinate their population prior to COVID spreading throughout. There are a lot of scientific learnings that we can have from that. And I always thought the data from New Zealand and parts of Australia represent an extremely valuable piece of science that we really, really need to get access to. So let's start with some simple things and let's introduce Dr. Matt Shelton from NZ, the S in New Zealand. Thank you very much, Matt, for joining us. The first thing I'll ask you to do is just give a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, Philip. Thanks very much for having me in. So I've been a doctor for 38 years. I was trained in the UK, and I spent about half of my working life, actually no more than half of my actual life in New Zealand now. Actually, I came here in '94. So I've been in practice here since then, predominantly in primary care, general practice, but about the last half of that time in more integrative medicine. So I've had a combined conventional and integrative practice here in Wellington from 2010 until ignominious exit in 2021 from my practice. So I was suspended by the Medical Council for communicating some of my thoughts on informed consent and the need for proper due diligence over the vaccine to my patients. In November, I was suspended, and three of us have all won our rights. Well, we appealed against suspension, and we all won in the district court. And we're part of the group. Well, I'm part of the group now. We've got well over 200 people, over 250 now. Most of those are doctors who, are occupying very solid moral high ground, we feel, in holding out and advocating for long tried and trusted principles of human rights, not just about ethical the right to breed, unforced consent, the right to autonomy, the precautionary principle, the importance of protecting children, and pregnant women and women of childbearing age, preventing untoward harm. These things are our absolute gold standards. And as they were for all doctors in this current era. So that's to who I am. So I'm working pretty much full time with NCDSOS to try and just keep getting these messages out. And we're asking a lot of questions, and we're running projects and trying to support vaccine injured people and advocate for families of lost loved ones in uncertain circumstances, shall we say. But I need to also just say at this stage that I'm not actually a practicing doctor. I don't have a practicing certificate. The Medical Council moved to resuspend me as soon as I won my appeal, and my annual practicing certificate lapsed during that time anyway. So it actually suits me to not be a suspended doctor, and I've got plenty of things to do anyway. I just don't work as a doctor, and I'm certainly not here to diagnose anybody or make medical treatments. But I am entitled to my own views, which are hard won and based on thousands of hours of education. But I'm not standing here as a practicing medical doctor at the moment.
I understand that, Matt, and I appreciate that stance. And part of what I try and do first is understand people. Clearly you've taken an angle that many other clinicians don't do, because you've gone down the integrative route of medicine. What made you do that? What made you take that transition away from the standard?
That's a really good question. Journey rather than a sort of road to Damascus, kind of flashing light at one stage. I never really felt comfortable in my own skin as a professional. I was frustrated with managing chronic disease. We never could really get to the heart of why people were sick. There were certain questions I'd always had, that things that never made sense to me, and I always thought they think, perhaps I am. But understanding the causes of illness, and that not everybody's medical label or diagnosis has the same underlying causes. It eventually led me to think, well, I ought to know something about nutrition, surely, because people are as good as the building blocks they're using to construct themselves. And I bought a book, the second book actually, and I opened it, and it was full of biochemical pathways and pictures of plants and cavemen, and all these lights started going on. And I understood that actually there was so much stuff that either we'd never been taught about in school or were taught, without understanding its relevance.
So confused.
It's all about, much of it is about chemistry and the building blocks that we use. And the hand that the body's dealt, it will play as best it can. But when it can't,
You're gonna die.
you can get signs of symptoms of disease. So that began a process of my own education and learning and ultimately teaching to a sort of postgraduate level in nutritional medicine and environmental medicine that completely freed up my thinking and helped me become a much better doctor of life.
Wow. So listen, when we come to the crux of the matter with regards to COVID-19, so when the pandemic hit in 2019 into 2020, and it was starting to circulate across the world, what was your instinct at that time?
Well, I paid a lot of attention during the swine flu epidemic in 2008 because looking through it was very clear immediately to me when the virus hit November, July, October, to actually symptoms were released quite so it was clearly influenza type illness. But the point is they were waiting for I wasn't going out to their houses, which with classic rehab later. What that feels like, you just want to die in contact with. So although it was very infectious, seemed more infectious disease in cats and other influenzas that I've worked through, many of my colleagues have worked through their careers. It wasn't a severe performance, but there was this real push and excitement around vaccination. And in the end, swine flu came and went, and the vaccine proved to be harmful, and there were a number of deaths, and several hundred British school children, school-aged children, got a sort of epileptic disorder called narcolepsy. And in the wake of that, the European Commission did an investigation, and they came out very, very critical of the WHO and Big Pharma for using it to manipulate people's fear and to justify rolling out a vaccine before it was ready. And that always stuck in my mind. And I immediately wondered, are we looking at the same thing here? Because although initially it looked very frightening very quickly, as data came out, it proved actually to be just another medium influenza level sort of severity type virus that would probably come and go if left to do its own thing.
So at the time, New Zealand took the bold step of literally closing down its borders, preventing COVID from getting in, and they did this quite successfully by preventing almost a zero COVID strategy, like what happened in China, to some extent in Australia. So at the time, did you think that was the right way to go, or would you, as they say, have let it rip?
Very early on, I was just as vulnerable to some of them.
Why is my squirrel doing weird slow head movements? Head dropping, very odd behavior. Oh my god. Oh really? What? Truly feet. Swiftly. Okay. What? Really? Interesting. Can squirrels feel pain? Fucking stupid. Ew. What? Mm. Wow. No, no touch me. Oh, fuck off. Really? Oh, no. That's so sad. Mm. Interesting. Whoa. You okay? John? You okay? What the fuck was that? Glenn? Is it warming? I don't know. Whatever.
We're seeing and hearing. I suppose there's other people. In fact, there was a petition put around by some doctors to the Prime Minister to actually close the borders from, this wasn't to lock them down, but to close the borders from overseas visitors while they're gaining more information and to buy us time to understand the actual severity. I'll put my name to that.
Okay.
But, within a few weeks, we had the John Ioannidis, the statistician and the WHO itself,
Hello.
talking about the IFR infection fatality rate being much lower than it was
Lovely.
told and frightened. And one of the first interviews I did actually was with John Campbell in probably March 2020. So we were already in our lockdown. How long we can keep ourselves locked down and locked in and sort of cut off from the world. But the conversation locally here was very much about, a vaccine will come and we may have to do this until a vaccine is here. And we're thinking, well, that's crazy. It takes 5 to 10 years to develop a safe and effective vaccine. You know, are we going to see a lockdown? But I think that's you know, the initial strategy of preventing people coming into the country so that it may be harboring or could have been very dangerous virus. There was new information and it was the ignoring of those that's got sort of our attention.
Yeah. So as I move through, because I'm just taking us through the steps here, so I'm quite fascinating to hear the perspectives. So you then go through all of 2020 in a lockdown, which I understand your perspective was now. But then they did make the decision to do the lockdown during COVID. Now the vaccine comes on board, and there is great excitement across the world because the initial studies are showing reduced in a short period of time, new technology, great outcomes. What were your thoughts at that point when the initial data started to come in about the success of at least the Pfizer, that was number one, that got onto the market?
Well, by this point, we'd already had some curious things that happened here. The most obvious one was that hydroxychloroquine, about which there was some very exciting and seemingly high-level data coming out from real-world use. They were taken off the shelves, as was artemisia, very popular and sort of sought after natural health products, say natural approaches to cancer, etc. And then it's also an anti-parasite. WHO recommended essential medicine for chloroquine-resistant malaria. So that had raised eyebrows, to put it mildly. Being in a lockdown with COVID and having really empty waiting rooms and doing a few phone consults and things, we had lots and lots of time to look at what was going on in the literature and what doctors were.
Where's the date? The date. Yeah. Next Tuesday. Okay? Come on. Save.
So we were starting to think in terms of treatments, and that actually, when COVID did come here, we'd be better placed. And then there was this huge splash around this 95% effective thing, and because we were already, we had other sources of information that we sort of found that we were to trust and listen to. Other people said, look, there's a big difference between the relative effectiveness and the absolute reduction in cases. And if you do the numbers, it's not nearly as good as Pfizer was saying. And I taught lectures on interpreting clinical trials and the difference between absolute reduction and relative reduction, and the numbers needed to treat and the numbers needed to vaccinate to prevent a case and things. So, we were very sceptical straight away, and we sort of organised ourselves in the sort of subsequent few months. And in fact, we're writing to government before the vaccine rollout started here with exactly those concerns. But the marketing of safe and effective, and frankly, if you say something's 95% effective, that's as good as saying.
Okay.
Talking about transmission, we were asking questions, and affecting at what. But the assumption was that everybody had going into it is that they wouldn't get COVID. And in fact, on our famous occasion during Delta, our Prime Minister said, Cameron said exactly that. If you get vaccinated, you won't get or die from Delta.
Yeah, those are some big statements, and I suspect it has been said, and I had to reflect carefully on it, is that when they were making those statements, the companies would have known those statements were not accurate. And even though they weren't making the statements, did they have a responsibility for those statements and to say, actually, that is not what the study was looking at. They were looking at severity of disease, not transmission of disease. So those are some very important points that should have been brought out. But I want to go back to something that you said with regards to early treatment, because the interesting thing in the context of New Zealand is that it would never have been applicable because you didn't have COVID. How did that thought work with regards to early treatment as opposed to other parts of the world where they were having COVID spreading through?
Well, I think we all thought that, we knew we'd get COVID at some point. The country, the borders would be opened up. And we were looking at other countries, going through it. And we thought, look, our time will come probably. And some of us were dubious by asking questions that were completely ignored and second or answer around transmission and what sort of immunity would we get, because it was clear that clinical trials were really only about reducing symptoms. So, we knew that the country would have to be opened up. And our personal lockdowns, in-home lockdowns were 6 weeks or something the first time round, and then
5 months.
we sort of got our lives back relatively. And then there was great excitement and preparations to the vaccine rollout. And we were all told constantly that this will be the salvation, and we would be able to travel and see our families and things because of the miracle of the vaccine. We just had to basically get in behind it and all support it. And there is nothing wrong with that. If you're given that information plainly, you're not going to rock the boat. But we all knew that the information was lies. And your question about, or your point about, that we should trust what we're told. The major responsibility that drug companies feel is to their shareholders. And in fact, in law, they're much more culpable if they do something that might reduce their bottom line than tell the truth and look after patients. And there's a trail of huge fines that drug companies have racked up. Pfizer has the biggest single record fine in the world. So these people don't have a great track record, for sure. And part of learning, your own trade as an integrated medicine person is understanding the limitations of behaviour that's made you question and got you there in the first place. So it's all public domain information that we shouldn't necessarily take what we say on face value. And I'm trying to be as generous as I can in the way that I say this.
So when did you start to get in trouble from the perspective of going against that narrative? When did that start to happen for you?
You mean as far as the regulators? Because I was already struggling with my own thoughts and feelings around this, and then starting to see, I thought I was seeing vaccine side effects quite early on. Elderly people and some of my own patients who were workers, frontline workers and things. And just the the sheer speed at which this thing appeared was very, very concerning. And I personally was smelling a rat by the time the first people got vaccinated here, because I'd seen the extreme reporting of side effects and deaths in other countries that were already doing their rollouts. It was off the charts, literally, like nothing else that we've got before. But I felt I had a responsibility to my patients who are what's called capitated. So if you work as a standard GP in this country, you have a contract with the government to provide primary care, and you receive a sort of base funding for that to provide those services. And then there's a sort of top up that patients pay depending on various factors. So I had a number of patients that were balanced to me, and I had an obligation to provide medical care, but also give my perspectives. And filling what was a huge gap in knowledge and information that I thought was required in order for people to make good care decisions. And we knew with certainty that it wasn't needed to add to the beginning. But we'd had a year being conditioned, I suppose, to think that our function going forward as GPs was to be heroic swappers, swap everything that moved, and to champion.
Fuck. Absolute fucking garbage piece of shit fucking computer.